Hi everyone, welcome to episode 8 of One Step at a Time with Charlie Chen. And I think, given that today is a special day and given what has happened recently, I guess it is about time for us to talk about, well, what it means to be an American. And I think it would be good to examine this from, hmm, I guess I can tell my story of becoming an American to better explore this concept, right? So before I was even an American, I remember growing up in China as a kid, and and even back then, that was like what 1995, all the way like when I started having consciousness, 1995 to 19 like 2000s. American influence in China was already prominent. Now, of course, it's not just American because to uh, Chinese people, everything, if it is from the West, it doesn't really distinguish which West. So if you go to a place like a Western restaurant, you can get burgers, you can get pizza, you can get pasta, you can get everything is mixed together. It's just a blanket statement. The West. It's very much like going into a Chinese buffet here in America, where you can have more than just Chinese food. You might even have Korean food and sushi on the side, and maybe Mongolian grill for some weird reason. So so there was a presence there, and I guess I think Dirty Dancing, like things like Dirty Dancing, was in China. So I guess from the Chinese perspective, even before I became an American, I guess we saw American as people who are expressive. They're not afraid to get their point across. They dance, they enjoy music, and they seem happy, at least from outside looking in, right? They seem happy and maybe borderline flaunting their happiness and their success, but it's not so where it's hateable. In fact, it's done in such a way where you actually look at that and I can see how my mom was mesmerized by the abundance and the success and the carefree nature of what was now looking back, I guess, a form of advertisement, propaganda, whatever, right? But that was the view of America from back then. Like you see scenes from like people driving on Brooklyn Bridge and things like that, big cities, New York, California, things like that, right? But then I moved to America, and and that was back in 2000s. And when I moved to America, I guess the major, well, yes, we did stop by places like Las Vegas and things like that. We, I grew up in a small town, and a small rural town in New Mexico, and well, it it's not everything that the movie has showed. Of like, there's no mega tall buildings. In fact, it's a quiet, nice little small town, and and it's enjoyable too. Even which is kind of funny because like in China, um, uh, sometimes we call rural areas 农村, right? So farmland, farm village, right? And and of course, with people leaving farm villages to go to cities to build better lives, people who aren't in the know Chinese who aren't in the know when first move to America and they don't go to a big city, they sometimes, because I got it from my relatives, right? And my relatives are like, "Wow, you guys are living in Nongchun. There's nothing, right? There's nothing out here." Like so, So that was something, right? But you can say that, and in a way, I understand how it's not a typical Asian experience because most Asians, when they move to America, they like to move to places with Chinatowns, right? New York, California, maybe Seattle. And, well, so my experience growing up as an American, well, a Chinese American, is not the typical Asian experience. But that's the thing, right? The thing with life is that now it's not always true, but sometimes you give up things so you can gain, and sometimes you gain things so you can give up things, right? And what we gave up to the comfort of city life was that we gained, or at least especially me compared to my mom, I gained the ability to pretty much just be, right? Because living as an Asian, there's a lot of competition. And what happens if your education, other than the language barrier at the time, is just so much better than everybody else, right? Well, so what I did was I used that time to read, I used that time to actually try to understand the American society, right? And now it was difficult because I lived far away from everyone, but it's not like that the American spirit or the way of life isn't bleeding into me day to day. And so, what is it like to be an American in a small town? Well, I mean, you wake up, you go to work, and then you come back. I mean, but the cool thing about small towns is that you get to know your neighbors, you get to know your coworkers, and since there are only so many stores, um, people tend to be nicer. Now the question is it because they're nicer because there's repercussions and there's no place to run because that small town is all you got, right? so and so it does play a huge contrast between a small town and a big city when I eventually moved to one because in big cities people tend to be more confident, but there's also more because because well, living in city is difficult sometimes. So they're more confident, they're more proud of being a city folk because it's not as broken down as small villages, small towns. But then but then it's more likely to run into people who are overstating their value, like people who break their promises, people who. But then there's no repercussion for them because big city, there's a new sucker made every day, right? So there's also that side of America. But tell you what, though, the great thing about cities is that cities give out a lot bigger paychecks than small towns, right? And and it's like a disease. It's almost like an addiction. Once you have a taste of the good life, you want to keep it going, right? And so there's also that part. So then we circle back to the question: what does it actually mean to be American? I mean, based on our Christian values, looking back, it will be something like Good Samaritan and things like that, where we take care of each other. We have a sense of morality, right? But then there's also the financial side of it, where like when we ask people about what does it mean to be American to the world, we think about what? We think about Vegas. We think about cowboys. We think about New York. We think about California. And maybe NASA, but not everyone is a space nut. But so if we break down what each symbolism means, maybe we can circle closer, right? Vegas. opportunity, the thrill of gambling, material riches, and that lavish burlesque lights, right? Cowboy, someone who's independent, somebody who's a free spirit, and maybe have a sense of justice, right? Cowboy killing bad guys and unfortunately natives, but in the name of justice, it's all justified. But so we have that. Then, then what? Then New York and California, and well, New York and California, those are big cities, right? New York, you imagine Empire State. So it showed a picture of community where people are proud to be New Yorkers. And while they may be mean to each other, there's a certain kind of bond and understanding between each other, right? And then you think about California, I see palm trees, I see, you know, one-story buildings and little homes connecting, and then there's a real sense of togetherness, even though it might get violent sometimes. So, what does it mean to be an American? And of course, we understand America as a melting pot of everything. Now on that note, the thing with like, I never quite understood why they kept on pushing diversity because it's like, yes, having different opinions is good, but the assumption is that people share the same dreams in the team because if they share different dreams, different goals, and then you and all like if you're trying to fill diversity quota without first confirming why they're there or what they're trying to achieve, you're going to run into issues, right? But if it is different people, doesn't matter white, black, yellow, brown, other, doesn't really matter. If everyone is like, I come to America, I want to find a better life for my family, right? I want come to America, I want to make a name for myself in the best country in the world. So there's that going on, right? But but that's the thing. America is really good at advertisement. There are also stories about like crime, gangs, and things like that, but those aren't as prominent in the propaganda that it sends out to the world. But however, domestic people tend to enjoy it, like crime stories, and then History Channel talking about things like that. So we have that going on. But what does it mean to be American? There's something that's and I think maybe by comparing it between what I was talking about a while back, the thing with AI, how I think that America can't beat China in the AI race if it goes down its current path because China has literally more data points because China has more people, right? So from a volume perspective, you're already losing based on how many data that you can feed, right? And then on top of that, China has a longer time being authoritarian. So America, well, but and that's the thing that really bugs me. It's like, was America authoritarian all along, right? I don't think so because there's a lot of like live and let live situations in America. I memories of people helping out each other and even concepts like paying it forward, all learned in my time here in America. So I think that if America were to fall, it's not going to be because of some outside force. It's going to be because America has lost its way. But how does it manifest itself? I mean, do people still trust each other? Maybe we do. But then you think about like, and this whole economy thing is also really making it difficult for people to trust each other because people are trying to survive. But then the thing with money is that money comes from other people. Well, if money comes from other people and you talk to other people, it muddies the intention behind reaching out to others, right? And actually that's a social skill I've been trying to cultivate lately is like how what is it like? How do I get better at socializing with others without without aiming to just gaining or anything material in mind? Maybe just an exchange of ideas, maybe an understanding of the other person. That is difficult for me because when I socialize, at least growing up, I always feel like I'm have to talk about something or bring something or make it about some activity or the other. But I have come to realize that it's important. Like the small talks that I so despised as a nerd growing up, they actually serve a function. And but anyway, but yeah, what does it mean to be an American? Is it the guns that we have? No, the guns are just a meaning to an end, like a means to an end, right? It, is it the acknowledgement of a person's rights and personhood? To be an American. Now, of course, you also have the happy-go-lucky, like patriots who just salute the flag and really love the country. But then, if you ask them more in detail why they love the country, they have nothing to say other than "I'm American, I love America, America, rah rah rah," right? So we have that. Is it the football teams that we have? I think so. So if we were to break it down, what makes an American, right? We have people who help others, like disaster. Well, like whenever a disaster happened in America, while other countries does it, America tend to do it in a bigger way. It's more thorough and it's more personal whenever people help each other. Sometimes they don't even wait for government approval, they just do it, right? So we have this thing for helping one another as Americans. Then we also, what else we have? We have prosperity, or we had prosperity, but in a way, compared to the rest of the world, we're still pretty prosperous. So we have prosperity. It shows our mastery of resources or our abundance, right? Although it is questionable with the amount of cheap stuff we import and then making things that no longer last. Because, if an item lasts, you can sell it again for more income in the future, right? Even though selling complementary services or upgrades to make it even better, and I'm not talking about replacing it, upgrades, I'm talking about stuff like, I don't know, you buy a computer, you buy a graphics card, right? Upgrade. You're not replacing the computer, you're just adding more to it. So you have that. So we have being a good Samaritan and helping out people along with paying it forward. We have material mastery and abundance, right? Um, I mean, I guess we'll throw it in there. America also have a great nature scene, like a nature scene where They, instead of dedicating all the land and water and everything for production, they're willing to actually create zones where you can just enjoy nature as it was intended, right? National parks for that thing. So, so Americans love to help people. Americans are good at material things, so materialistic, right? Americans love nature, so sometimes I wonder if American spiritualism comes from both religious and being good and, you know, their connection to the nature, right? What else does it mean to be American? Assertive, definitely, and having the ability to either promote themselves, confidence, or their ability to say no, which is exercising their rights and consent, right? Okay, so we have being morally good, we have material mastery, we have nature, and we have, man, I can't believe I forgot it. So we have, what do we have? What do we have? We're morally good, we have material mastery, we have spiritualism through connection with nature. Oh, and of course the extreme sports people. And then of course we have the one that I was talking about is they're confident in their ability to assert themselves both for and saying no, right? So they're assertive and confident. Hmm. What else about American? And I guess maybe Americans are gamblers because they just like to take chances. And you might think that's a bad thing, but it also means that they're willing to take chances on a new business venture and maybe and when it comes to like human relationships, like the first one I talked about where they try to be morally good, well, it also means like maybe giving the bad guys a chance to redeem themselves, right? It's all gambling. But that's precisely the thing, right? When you gamble, you give the opportunity for good to happen, right? So yeah, maybe this five is what makes an American. So being morally good, you have spiritualism, morally good, spiritualism through nature, material mastery, confidence and assertiveness, and and the tendency to take chances. Gamblers. I think, yeah. I mean, there's so much more to being like an individual, but as an American, that actually defines America pretty well. Because even if everything else matches, the willingness to take risk for America, like, you know, the miracle of flight, right? The Wright brothers, that's some American thing, right? Willingness to just jump out there and say, this thing is gonna fly, right? So, yeah, yeah, this five makes a pretty good American. Morally good, material mastery, connection through nature, well, spiritualism through their connection to nature, um, assertive and confidence and assertive, and willingness to take a chance. Because even if everything else is the same, I mean, being an Asian or being Chinese, I've known many Chinese people who just want to save money and don't ever want to spend money and they don't want to take chances, right? And and that works, but it's a lot slower, right? Because no risk, no reward. But but the biggest cost to that is also about It's like, because if you don't take risk, you don't gain understanding at the same time, because you have, the saying, you mess around and you find out, right? Well, messing around is risk taking. If you don't risk, you don't gain. So you have all that going on. So yeah, this is the five that I think makes a great American. And I'm very thankful for this country to have, well, treated me right. This country have given me the opportunities that I needed to be who I am today. It freed me from being just you know, freed me from just being obedient Asian, the stereotypical, right? And the ability to be able to talk about things and think about things for myself, I really appreciate it. And I want this to continue for our future generations to come. And that to me is very important. And that's why it's one of the reasons why I got into comedy, because sometimes some rights, if you don't exercise it, you lose it. So, yeah. Anyway, it's been a crazy week. I'm pretty sure you know what have happened yesterday. And it's unfortunate, because if we can't even talk, then the only thing left is to fisticuffs, right? And that's not a place that America should go to. And but I still have hope for America, because I'm sure there are people who are awakened by it, the incident yesterday. And perhaps it's what's needed to make this country a better place. Anyways, thank you, and I'll talk to you guys next week.